Before we get started in today's show, I want to tell you about Stamps.com, longtime sponsor of the BS Report. It's quick, it's convenient. More importantly, it's really, really easy to use. You do not have to go to the post office anymore. You can just stay home. Make your own office, your personal post office. You can avoid lines. You can avoid just standing there as somebody mails some package, some 79-year-old lady. Who needs that? Make your own mailing and shipping from your house. Stamps.com. Put in the top right of the site, BS. You'll get a deal and a scale and a whole bunch of other things. It's a great product. You can buy and print official U.S. postage using your computer and printer. Stamps.com will give you a digital scale. It will automatically calculate the exact postage for any letter, any package. They'll even help you choose the best class of mail. Wow. Why go to the post office? Just give it to the postman. Stamps.com. Check it out.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. A sunny but chilly Monday here in Southern California. Almost a chilly Sunday for Cowboys fans. Almost a really devastating weekend for Cousin Sal, who finally lost his SportsCenter pick. He had the Cardinals plus 6.5, and Ryan Lindley had to suffer through that. Then looked like he was going to suffer through a Dallas catastrophe. And then you wired that check to the refs. Things turned around. Congratulations.
I know you're just trying to get under my skin, but I'll go along with it. You don't actually think there's any collusion there or anything weird, right?
No, I just think it was one of the most inexplicable calls in the history of the NFL that I've watched. I've been watching for 40 years. I've never seen them call the pass interference and then pick up the flag. I've never seen the guy actually announce the penalty and then pick it up.
Well, it's not. But if one official doesn't understand the rule as well as the head official, like let's say you're about to ground your son for like eating dirt or something. You say, "That's it. I've had enough." You're grounded for a week, and then your wife says, "Hey, listen, we have this Dave and Buster's thing in a few days, and I'm carpooling, and it's just weird if he doesn't go. So can we make it 3 days?" That's it. So you talk things over, and then you get it right. So that's exactly what happened in the game yesterday.
I'm fine with the talking it over, but then why did the guy announce the penalty and then as they were talking it over? That was weird.
I don't know.
That seems shaky.
Well, isn't it about getting it right, though? Isn't it about getting it right? That would have been a ticky-tack call. The guy, I mean, if anything, the contact was drawn when Pettigrew grabbed Hitchens' face mask, and they say, well, Hitchens never turned for the ball. It's like, yeah, because the guy's got hold of his face mask. That's why he didn't turn for the ball. So, I don't know.
I had no dog in this race because I was losing my Dallas pick anyway.
Right.
I thought it was pass interference. First of all, he was face guarding, but he also had his arm on the guy's arm. There was a lot of contact. He definitely he made it so that illegally the guy had more trouble catching the pass than he should have, which is pass interference.
But it's not. But you have to give ground. You have to come back to the ball. You're allowed to face guard in the pros. So, and if there was any contact, like I said, I think he was just trying to rip his head free from the guy's grasp of the face mask. But I just don't understand why this is the most anything's been made of a penalty with 8 minutes left in the game. The Lions, Matthew Stafford would have had to drive down and score a touchdown, something he hadn't done. They scored 3 points all half. So he really needs a touchdown to win that game. Everyone's so sure that he's going to pull that off. And how dare anyone say that Roger Goodell's fixing it? How about the flag that they picked up earlier in the week? How about Dominican Sue playing this game? This fat criminal being allowed to play this game. It's outrageous that he's playing. What about that flag that was picked up? And we made that criminal cry in the press conference in the post game, and that's why we're going to the Super Bowl. Right there. That's the reason.
And he's going to come back next year in the Giants, and you get to face him 2 times a year for the rest of your life.
And we'll make him cry again and again and again.
I watch a ton of football, as do you.
Yeah.
I watch football every weekend. I watch way too much football. They always make that call. I mean, whether pass interference, these calls have gotten too chintzy is a whole other debate. But they call it against the defense all the time. And you never see the benefit of the doubt given the defense.
Okay. Well, I don't think anyone wants to hear me argue this point. And
no,
I certainly don't think anyone wants to hear a Patriots fan argue who benefited off a franchise-changing call argue a referee's
a call that was interpreted correctly.
Oh, it was outrageous. So this was interpreted correctly too. It was face guarding. That was fine.
But he had him. There's pictures of him with his arm on the guy's arm.
What about
the guy's trying to lift his arm?
What about he's grabbing his face mask for 4 steps down the field?
I didn't see that part.
Okay, here's what I saw. The Lions lost this game because Caldwell punted on 4th and 1,
Wow,
and Jason Garrett went for it on 4th and 6. The call that I didn't agree with at the time, but God bless him. I talk about a franchise-changing play. I think that might have been it. 21 yards to win.
Well, the two biggest winners yesterday from everyone going crazy about that call, and for that becoming the picked up flag game, which I really think is how we're going to remember that game. Jim Caldwell, big winner because he didn't have the balls to go for it. 4th and 1 on the Dallas 46-yard line.
Right.
You're a Dallas Cowboys fan. There's 8 minutes left in the game. They've been running the ball on you the whole game. I'm pretty sure they could have gotten a yard. You must have been absolutely over the moon delighted when you saw they were punting.
Of course. And just like Lions fans are probably bummed when we went for it on 4th and 6. But
yeah, that's the other thing. I was thinking when they went for it on 4th and 6, I'm thinking if I'm a Lions fan right now, I'm freaking out. I wanted them to punt so badly here, and now they're going for it, and they're going to throw it to Jason Witten. And apparently the Lions were the only people who didn't realize Jason Witten was getting the ball there.
Right.
But then the combo of just not going for if they get that 4th down and 1, now you're taking it under 6 minutes. You're almost definitely getting at least a field goal attempt unless Stafford gets sacked, which puts you up. What was the score? 2017.
Well, they would need another first down. They're at the 45, but they would have. Yeah.
Well, it puts you in range. You're one more first down away from a field goal.
Sure.
But then on top of it, Sam Martin comes in and does a 10-yard punt. If anyone's going to say that this game was fixed, then Sam Martin has to be involved in any fixing conspiracy.
Yeah. He and
them.
Butler on the Cardinals must have gotten together to gone over the same game plan.
That was probably one of the, considering the situation and the impact on the game and the fact that it was the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I don't know the list of the worst punts ever, but it has to be on that list.
Very bad.
10 yards?
Yep.
10-yard punt? But then, and then as you said, Dallas gets the 4th and 6, and then they get a big 3rd and 7 on the Detroit 13. They get a pass interference penalty. All right, now flip it around. You score. It seems like Detroit's devastated. You get this miraculous call. Pete Morelli doing the Earl Dave Hebner combo on you.
Oh God! And
then Stafford fumbles. Your guy picks it up, and then he fumbles it.
Yeah.
Now, what are your emotions at that point?
Well, I'm going nuts. But everyone's like, "Oh, just fall on it, fall on it." LeBron James with 10 exclamation points, fall on it. When you're in the game like that, you just, I don't know. I guess you could pull it all back, but with the adrenaline running, you pick it up and you probably scoop it and go with it. But yeah, hold on to it for crying out loud. I was going crazy, but this is what I mean about this team. This is a different feel from the Tony Romo, Jason Garrett, falling apart at the last minute thing. This is Romo doesn't have to play out of his head anymore to win a game. DeMarco Murray didn't even have a great game, and they won the game. They were down 14-0. That doesn't happen. And you have guys like Terrence Williams avenging his pass interference call in the very next, that drive, a long touchdown, and same with DeMarcus Lawrence, then the strip sack of the fumble, and at the end to avenge his bad fumble recovery. So I don't know. I don't know that we beat the Packers, but I have a really good feeling. Not to mention the hatred towards the Cowboys. It just feels right. Doesn't it feel right? Doesn't it feel right about now?
You almost, it sounds like you've already had a Diet Coke today. That's how riled up you are.
The Coke Zero, how dare you?
Des Bryant did not have a good game, and then also got saved from going down in Cowboys lore. He walks onto the field without his helmet to yell at the ref after the pass interference penalty. Another thing that I've never seen before was somebody doing that and them not calling a penalty. I didn't know you were allowed to just wander onto the field without your helmet and yell at referees. That was a good one.
Like I said, you have to get the call right, whether it takes a fellow referee to help you or a player on the team that was hurt and coming off. Everything I read says they don't have to call that a penalty. They could and they should, but they don't have to call that a penalty. So
especially if
he's fine this week, then it should have been a penalty, I guess.
It's not a penalty if the head of officials is on the Cowboys party bus in training camp.
I love it.
That's definitely not a thing. This is great. You guys are the villains now.
Dominican Sue played this game. Let's not forget, you went crazy about it in the middle of the week. What a short memory you have.
What, that he played?
That he played. The suspension was overturned. If Roger Goodell or anyone is favoring Dallas, he doesn't play that game. Come on.
I was more crazy that they flip-flopped on it. I don't think he should have been suspended. I think his feet were cold, and he didn't realize he was stepping on Aaron Rodgers. He thought he was stepping on a homeless man outside.
It's going to be interesting. One of us is going to win an acting award this podcast. Maybe both.
Well, another thing with Detroit, because they really blew that game, and everybody's going to focus on the call. And I am conceding it was one of the worst calls of all time, and I couldn't believe it when it happened.
It was the right call, but it was terrible.
Understand. I've never seen that sequence of events at a football game ever.
Right.
But
we should see it more. I love when the officials get it right eventually.
But the other thing that nobody is focused on is giving up the touchdown inside Dallas's own 20 before halftime when you're up 14-0, and you just randomly decide to give up, like, what was that, like 85 yards?
Yeah, that was bad.
There's 2 minutes left in the half. Like, the only thing you want to do in that standpoint is not give up a big play.
Yeah.
And they give up, and all of a sudden you cut the lead in half. I mean, if you go into that halftime 14-0 or 14-3, we had Charlie Pierce there from Grantland. He was sitting in the stands, and he said people were freaking the F out.
Sure.
And he said the people in front of him left in the third quarter. They're
really?
just gone.
Does he smell? Does he bathe?
But he said he was just like, the vibe in there was just crazy.
Oh yeah.
And just people just, and as a Red Sox fan, I've gone to games like that where you're expecting the worst, and the fans just freeze up, and everybody's sphincter is tight, and it just flipped on that. The call. Then the 4th and 1 punt, then the 4th and all of a sudden it just felt like Dallas was going to win.
Well, and I felt like if the Lions could drive the field 95 and 99 yards and score both, and I was like, that's it. You deserve to win if you could do that on the road. And can we agree that there's no reason to rush the punter when he's booting it from 9 yards deep in his end zone? Like, 3 things could happen, and 2 of them are bad. Like, the best thing that happens is it's blocked and goes out of the end zone, and you get a safety. But you're going to get good field position anyway. You're trading that for a field goal probably, and then the roughing. There's more likely a chance of roughing or running into the kicker because you have full speed and not as much distance to travel. So it's what I call the yellow mustard of plays. Like, yellow mustard is never preferred to spicy golden mustard. That's what it is. Just stay back and return the punt, or don't.
Who did you watch the game with?
I watched it with Corolla and our friend Brad. And,
I didn't realize you watched it with friends. Yeah, that was a mistake.
No, I know. I was. Even though I emailed you, my regrets. I was oddly confident in the game. I really was.
Did you cry when Romo threw the go-ahead touchdown and then pounded the turf?
No, I didn't cry. What do you mean?
Did I cry? Well, no, Romo's made you cry before.
No, there'll be tears. There will be tears, but
you
not
cried.
this week.
You cried after the botched kickoff, the botched field goal snap that night. You went to Blood Diamond, and when Leo died, you cried in the theater.
I did cry in the theater. Yeah, that was different. Yeah, when they lose, I'll cry for sure. Yeah, I cried when I saw your tweet accusing the Cowboys of cheating. That's when I cried.
I don't think the Cowboys cheated. I think I just think it was a series of inexplicable
play with
events.
8 minutes left. Can't believe
inexplicable. It. The announcers didn't know. Even Mike Pereira, who works for the league, even he didn't know what happened. He was like, I don't know what happened. That was pass interference.
Yeah, he always knows what happens. Forget it.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. You like the Cowboys in this spot.
Well, your defense worries me a little. I wasn't. If I'm a Lions fan, I mean, you got to stop focusing on that call. I know it's going to haunt you for the rest of your lives, but you really have to look at how your team played, some of the decisions that were made. It was just a weird game. I felt like Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate were getting open.
Yeah, they were.
They only had 10 catches.
Yeah, I think Brandon Carr was one of the luckier guys on the field. Like, he wasn't exposed.
Weird.
He wasn't having a good time covering.
And
Calvin
they were
Johnson.
running the ball. Like, I don't understand how they scored 2 touchdowns pretty early. They scored 6 points the rest of the game.
Well,
that made no
Stafford.
sense.
Just say what you will. Pressured Stafford to the point where there was a lot of holding going on when he scrambled for a first down, and that wasn't called, and then Witten wasn't called for holding. There's a lot. There's a popular video going around showing 8 calls that should have gone the Cowboys' way. So.
I love it. I love that you're embracing your heel status heading into Green Bay.
I feel like it's 1985 and I'm Roddy Piper coming down the tunnel, taking one knee and giving the Jimmy Snuka "I love you" sign to the fans as they pelt me with garbage. The Cowboys are hated again. It's great.
As you're going against America's new hero, Aaron Rodgers, who's won exactly one Super Bowl.
He should lay down for it. We made the villain that tried to end his career cry. He should lay down for us.
Well, Detroit, one of their mistakes, like you watch what Baltimore did in that Pittsburgh game.
Yeah.
I mean, they just know how to throw it deep and get that PI call.
Yep.
They know they put pressure on. This is what I thought. The more I watched the Arizona Carolina game, especially having picked Carolina and still thinking I had a chance to go 11-0, and I lost my next 3 picks, but just send Ryan Lindley back and just have him throw Hail Mary 40-yard passes downfield or try to get PIs or something. I think that should have been their offense.
Yeah. And listen, it was a bad pick in Arizona, and my dynasty crumbled there with my 15-0-3. But do you agree that if Ryan Lindley was terrible and not just atrociously disgraceful, that they cover that game at least? If he's not the top 3 worst playoff quarterbacks of all time, and he's like 4 through 10, like they have a chance.
I didn't like the pick because you went against rule number 1 of the playoffs, which is don't take a bad QB in the road.
I know, but my point
I
was
also went against it with
much.
Dalton. I went against it 2 games later with Andy Dalton, who's also not as bad as Ryan Lindley, but I sent my column in. They're editing it. I thought A.J. Green was playing. I just assumed this is the NFL. The guy's going to play, get a concussion. They'll make believe he's fine. He's going to play. And he actually got scratched like 20 minutes before we put the column up.
Right.
So if you're me, what do you do? Do you switch your pick at that point? Because I could have easily switched it and just rewritten like 2 sentences, and all of a sudden now I have the Colts -4.
Oh, you still could have.
I could have switched it because nobody had seen the column yet. But then I'm thinking, like, karmically, if I do that, doesn't that lie? Now I'm spending the whole weekend thinking I switched my pick. The Bengals are going to lose by 3.
I would have stayed with it, except then when you get on the field and you see A.J. Green out and Gresham was out. I mean, the Colts had a miserable time covering tight ends this year. That was big that Gresham was out, and all of a sudden your top targets are Sanu, who has, I think, 3 receptions in 3 games. Not the guy you spent $36 on, auction ad drop after week 3, and like Rex Burkhead and Ryan Hewitt. Like that. You want to blame Andy Dalton, but he didn't have a chance in that game. He really didn't.
Well, that was my fear. I really thought it was going to be a close game just because I didn't think the Colts are good. I thought it was going to be a 3-point game. So I like getting the extra point. I thought the Bengals had a chance to win.
Right.
A.J. Green comes out. So now the game starts, and Jeremy Hill's running the ball pretty well. And I'm like, all right, this is good. This has a 13-10-ish kind of feel. And eventually the Colts just realized that they had no receiver who could hurt them deep. And they just started moving up closer and closer. And now all of a sudden Jeremy Hill can't run the ball. Right. And Dalton has to pass, and none of his guys are ever open.
Yeah, and if the screen to Bernard didn't break for 70 yards, it just wasn't going to happen.
And they were trying. Yeah, they were like, here's our one chance is this Bernard screen, and the Colts were just ready every time. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, they had no pass rush on Luck, and this is also part of the playoff manifesto. Beware of the round 1 team that looked a little too good for what it actually is in round 1. Yeah. I think the Colts qualify for this because people are coming to that game like, oh, the Colts, Andrew Luck looked great. Like, first of all, they had no pass rush at all.
They didn't. And Ray Malugo went out for the Bengals. But he had a quiet 376 yards, Luck, and no turnovers. Like, he did all he could. And the one time he was pressured, the Bengals finally put pressure on him. That toss to Moncrief was tremendous. Like, he almost went over the line. But
great play. Hilton didn't have one of his better games. Right. Their running game is terrible, and Boom Herron puts the ball on the ground, which is going to come back to haunt them at some point, probably this weekend. Yeah. And then for the Baltimore-Pittsburgh, I didn't think Le'Veon Bell was going to be – I thought they'd be able to win the game by throwing the ball. Pittsburgh was my favorite pick of the week. I'm so confused by what they did offensively in that game. I thought they were just going to wing the ball, just like spread everybody out. We're throwing the ball every play.
Yeah.
And they were trying to, like, establish Ben Tate. Ben Tate's been waived by 2 teams.
Right.
What are you doing? Yeah, Todd Haley. I'm down on Todd Haley.
I don't know what that was. That was a bad game plan. And you wanted to say, rivalry, anything goes, it doesn't matter. But And is it that the Ravens are playing possum? You are nervous. You are a little nervous now. You weren't nervous last week. In fact, I had you rank which teams you want to go to Foxborough, and you had the Ravens first.
I know. Patriot fans are mad at me.
Well,
they thought I was too confident
actually, we have it on
week.
tape. What you said here. Hold on. Wait a second. This is not a reverse jinx. Bring on the Ravens. We're ready for them. They're a soft team. They're softer than a bag of marshmallows. They're softer than Charmin Ultra Soft 2-ply toilet paper. They're so soft, their offensive line was mistaken for buttermilk biscuits. Their running game is so soft, I think I might lay my head on them at night. That's all I got. Got to run to do Polatos. Zaza Pachilia. What you said.
I have a couple of Ravens points, and I think they're very important. I'm very excited to say them.
All right.
First of all, this whole thing about how the Ravens have been the Patriots' playoff nemesis. I know it's great on paper, but 2009, the Patriots were 10-6. It was the worst Patriots team in the last 12 years. It was the year after Brady's ACL injury. It wasn't totally the same. Welker blew out his ACL in Week 17.
Right.
The week before. Baltimore was just better. And they came in, they beat up the Pats, whatever. If you want to say like that was a major upset, I was certainly worried about that game going into it. 2011, the Patriots win by 3. Everybody talks about the missed Billy Cundiff kick. They talk about how Lee Evans caught the touchdown, but the guy stripped him.
Right, yeah, it wasn't
that's
a drop.
Still a good play by the Patriots.
Sure.
And by the way, Gronk was playing on one leg in that game.
Yeah.
That was Gronk had gotten hurt 5 weeks before, and he was the best guy in that team other than Brady, and was playing on one leg. So whatever, the Patriots won.
It's a close, good game. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. So then the year after, no Gronk. Gronk didn't play in the 2012 game.
Right.
And everyone's like, in the Ravens, 28-13 or whatever the score was. Patriots were driving for the go-ahead touchdown when Pollard hit Ridley and knocked him out. Ridley fumbled. The game changed. That was an even game. I feel like those teams play 10 times. Probably the Pats win 6, Baltimore wins 4. Whatever. My point is, the Patriots are healthy this time around. This is the best Patriots team that the Ravens have played in the playoffs of all these other times. And Gronkowski's healthy. I don't really know if you can compare those last 3 games to this one.
All right.
How's that? Is that good?
Well, yeah, there's no Ray Rice for sure. He busted it open that first game you talked about. And yeah, you think it's going to be a double-digit win, though? Well, let's do this. It's the first game Saturday, 1:35, 4:35 Eastern, right?
Well, I will say one thing about the Ravens, and I realized this when I was watching them play against Pittsburgh. They have a lot of big game guys, and I think that matters in the playoffs. They have different guys that you can just that just kind of come through when it matters, and people talk about Flacco. He is, for whatever reason, he's better in the playoffs, but Steve Smith and Torrey Smith, I think those guys are reliable.
Yep.
Justin Tucker, that guy is money.
Yep.
Jacoby Jones is, wouldn't you say he's the scariest kick returner?
Sure.
Suggs and Doomerville, those guys have just come through in big games.
Yeah.
So
they're players.
It's not a team that's not going to show up.
Flacco, best possum player, I think, in NFL history, maybe 5-0, 13 touchdowns, no interceptions in the last 5 playoff games.
He was awesome, but that was also the best they've played in 4 months. Like, that point cannot be emphasized enough. The last really good game they played against a good team was in Week 2 against Pittsburgh on a Thursday night. They had a bunch of offensive line issues. They lost 2 linemen, I think, in Week 16, Week 17. They had to move their guard to right tackle, which Collinsworth made a big deal about.
Right.
The secondary is banged up. And, I just...
Well, that's what I mean about playing possum. But now they have Nata back, and they're going to be, I don't know, they're going to be in this game probably for most of it.
So is he allowed to use Adderall during the playoffs or no? What's the rule on that?
You have so many conspiracy theories.
Well,
it's
the Ravens,
great.
I mean, if you're talking about PED teams from the last decade, the Ravens and the Seahawks have to be 1-2 in the list, right?
Yeah.
Is there any team had more PED shadiness?
Maybe that could be the Super Bowl. What's the odds on that matchup? That'd be nice.
My team's clean, except for our tight end who may have murdered 3 people.
What do you think? What do you think the line is? This is interesting. Ravens at Pats.
So I think I mailed you.
Oh, you did, yeah.
We mailed each other guesses because it's just too easy to see the lines in the playoffs. I think I mailed you Ravens by 8.
Yeah, you said 8. I said 8.5. It opened at 7.5. It's down to 7. So you get that game. You're scared. You want so bad for that to be 9. You do.
Well, I'll tell you, I will admit this. I really wanted to play Cincinnati or Indianapolis. I was very excited for one of those two teams.
Right.
After watching
Saturday night, yeah.
Yeah, after watching about 10 minutes of the Ravens at Saturday night, I was like, I screwed this up. Because at least the Ravens are going to think they're going to win. Like the Colts and Bengals would have gone into the New England in round 2, and I don't think either of those teams would have been like, we're winning this game. The Ravens are going to actually think they're going to win.
As much confidence.
I'd like to apologize to all the Patriots fans for not taking the Ravens seriously.
Now, let me ask you this. Our fantasy football banquet at Shakey's happens during this game. Any chance you show up? Let's say the Pats are up 28-3 late in the third. Do we see Bill Simmons at Shakey's?
28-3. How much time's left in the third?
3 minutes left in the third. You live 10 minutes away. You can get there for the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it'd probably be about 7 minutes left in the fourth.
All right. Okay.
The Ravens aren't going to score just 3 points in this game. I think they're going to, I'm worried about Steve Smith. People forget we took Steve Smith's Super Bowl ring way back when. That part I forgot. There's a lot of Ravens, like Terrell Suggs hates New England for some reason. Mm-hmm. Just going down the line, like they're certainly going to show up for the game.
Right.
I feel like such an ass for discounting them. By the way, I had this thing in my column about how I call it the wonk team. So since 2007, the Giants, and then you just go through every year, the team that kind of nobody took seriously, and all of a sudden they caught fire when the playoffs started. And that wonk team since 2007 was 22-3 in the playoffs.
Wow.
And won 4 Super Bowls and made a 5th Super Bowl. I didn't think the Ravens were the wonk team. I thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be the Panthers-Cardinals winner. But coming out of that weekend, it's clear that the Ravens were the wonk team.
Yeah, well, if the 7-8-1 Panthers win the Super Bowl, I might be done watching football for a while. I mean, at least for 10 months, but maybe
they can't make that line high enough. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
All right. So.
Well, we're there actually. If you want to do it, Panthers at Seahawks Saturday night.
What did you pick for Ravens Pats?
No, I said 8.5. You said 8, and so you get it.
Oh, so I win that one.
Yeah, you get that one.
So 7 there. From what we're looking at with these 4 games, and I don't know the lines yet because I've somehow avoided looking at them, but all of them are going to at least be like 5 points or higher. It's just a tease frenzy. And somebody's going to screw it up. And it's just a question of who's screwing up your tease and my tease and all the teases.
I know. Because it's not going to be 4 favorites. Then, I don't know, maybe we put something with Oregon the next day. So maybe we figure that out. Because
I have the rarely seen, I wrote about it on Friday, thanks to Mallory Rubin, our college football guru in the office. I lost both sides of my New Year's Day tease. I was excited about that. Yeah.
That was fun. We loved Alabama. That fell apart. What are you going to do? All right, Panthers at Seahawks.
Panthers at Seahawks. I went double digits. I said 10.5. And the more I look at this, I don't think you could get me to take the Panthers at anything less than 14.5.
Well, I was stupid. I went 9, and not that I would ever consider taking the Panthers at 9. You said 10.5. It opened at 12.5. It's now 10.5, which is weird. People are betting the Panthers. I don't really understand it, but
because their defenses look pretty good. Maybe they're thinking it's going to be one of those 17.
How much of that games. Arizona game, as bad as Ryan Lindley was, how much were you confident that plus 6.5? I'm going to dwell on this because it's changed my year, obviously, but. The Panthers wanted to give that game away so bad, and Cam Newton looked beat up to hell halfway through the third quarter.
He did. I thought that the Cardinals were going to have a miracle cover 19 different times in the second half, and we would have spent the rest of our lives wondering how a team covered a playoff spread with less than 100 yards offense.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing? I emailed this to you. I think we have to get this out in the open. Mm-hmm. I didn't like how he only made one pick. It smacked to me of somebody trying to protect their batting average with 3 days left in the baseball season and just sitting out with like a strained hamstring.
I don't think so. I think it's I scored 15 touchdowns in a row, and I chose to go for the extra point and not the 2-point conversion. That's how I see it.
What would have been the most impressive, though? What if you had done 3 picks like you always do, and done pick 2 games, and then done a tease.
Right, that's what I did. Yeah,
and then gone 3-0. Like now, it's like you're an American phenomenon. You're like the fat lady on that English version of American Idol show. What's her name?
Susan Boyle.
Yeah, you're the Susan Boyle of American gambling at that point. You're like, this guy was 15-0-3 and then said screw it and threw his balls on the table and made 3 picks in round 1 and hit them all. Now he's 18-0-3.
Well, first of all, I had Cincinnati. I would have gone 2-2 at best, so it's neither here nor there. But I told him, I said, I'm giving, I blame our cousin Jimmy. I said, I don't know how many games to pick. He said, keep the streak alive at all costs. I said, you know what? You're right. And everyone's pounding the Panthers, and this is stupid, and this is an NFC West team that's been bangs with the big boys against a cruddy NFC South team. I'm taking the points, 6.5. It's too many. And then I get to ESPN and they're like, hey, we're getting grief over here that you're only taking 1 game. I said, well, I became divish. I said, I'm only picking 1 game. And I went into makeup to have the lady fill in my bald spot. And all of a sudden a team of producers come in, people I have never met before, and said,
nice.
Hey, you have to pick, and Kenny Mayne's with them. And they said, you have to pick more than 1 game. I said, well, I'm not picking 1 game. I'm just not doing it. I only have analysis for 1 game. And they're like, well, you have to. And that's it. So I was like, all right, I'll throw in the Cowboys at the end, which is also a loser.
Well, I think you go the other way in round 2 and pick all 4.
I'm going to
do 2 and a
4.
tease.
I am, but I'm too confident. I think I'm thinking the same way as you with these games. Like,
but last week was all the teams that people thought were going to covered in round 1, right? Was there one, like, was there a team that people had a lot of money on or a lot of picks on?
Everyone seemed to have Dallas at the end there, right?
What do you mean?
They won but didn't cover. Everyone seemed to have Dallas.
I know, but people like the Lions. It seemed like a lot of people liked the Lions as like a live road dog. And it seemed like the people liked the Lions and the Ravens, and people thought once A.J. Green went out, the Colts were going to easily cover, and
people
nobody
like
wanted to take Ryan Lindley.
People definitely like the Steelers, right?
Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then there was one wonky game.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to be one this round.
Yeah, I know. And I'm hoping it's my team, but the things don't usually work out like that. So
Saturday night is Carolina at Seattle?
Yeah, and I don't feel
Why did they do that?
I don't know. They set that up a long time ago. They knew it last week.
That's awful.
I think I guess because Fox gets they gets their choice, so they're going to take Dallas Green Bay Sunday, and then I don't know. I don't know what happens. I don't know how it goes.
Me neither.
It's weird. All right, then we go to Sunday, Cowboys at Packers.
I put this in the Vegas zone. I said Packers by 5.5.
Yeah, you said 5.5. I said 6.5. It's 7. It's right at 7.
Ooh, no respect for the 8-0 on the road Cowboys.
No. Well, this never happened, right? 8-0 home team Packers versus 8-0 road team Cowboys.
It does seem a little improbable.
Yeah.
And here's why you get your conspiracy theories. Even though, as Barnwell pointed out, the NFL has already signed all its TV deals, so it doesn't really matter what the rating is. But Dallas Green Bay round 2 is short of Manning versus Brady is as good as you're going to do for the NFL.
Definitely.
And I don't know anyone who wouldn't watch this game.
If Baltimore,
even my mom would watch this game.
The winner doesn't really, as long as Denver, New England, and Seattle win. It's a great Final Four, right? I mean, it's as good as it gets, regardless who comes out of Dallas Green Bay.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter who comes out of Dallas Green Bay.
Yeah.
But your defense is better than it was.
We're going to have trouble covering these slants. You're
going to have trouble covering
everything else.
And that's why that was Detroit's biggest failing in that game yesterday. I just felt like those Tate and Megatron could have gotten open whenever they wanted.
It's going to take first of all, the guy Rodgers hasn't thrown an interception in Lambeau in 25 months. Is that accurate? I think I saw that this morning, and so that's not going to happen again. And it's going to take like a strip sack or something stupid to happen.
You have to hit him.
Yeah.
You know what? And maybe the Ravens are going to try this against the Patriots because the recipe against the Patriots that's beaten them has been pretty much the same, which is just rush up the middle, pressure Brady as much as you can, and then hit the living hell out of the receivers and the tight ends and the running backs on screen passes. And if you get a couple flags, so be it.
Yeah.
And that's what the Ravens are going to do this week. Like they're going to go after Gronkowski. I know they're going to try to tackle him in his knees and and hit him as hard as they can. They won't care if they get a couple penalties. I think that's what you should do in Lambeau.
All right.
Like, fine. Be like, all right, fine. We got 3 unnecessary roughness penalties. Who cares?
Well, I don't even think they'll let me on the field, but you mean the Cowboy, what they should do. Yeah.
Well, if you play, I said.
Okay.
But, I mean, so what? You threw Rodgers against the frozen turf a couple times. Oh, right. 15 yards. Like, I was thinking about that. Somebody got a terrible penalty in one of the games that felt like it should have been like a 35-yarder. Mm-hmm. I can't remember which game it was. It was just an egregious unnecessary roughness.
Is it this week?
I was thinking,
this weekend?
Yeah, it was this weekend. I can't remember what it was. It might have been the Steelers game, but
Roethlisberger. Yeah, I think so.
But that's with Rodgers. I would just be like, look, we're hitting this guy. He's going to score anyway. Let's pound him. Let's beat him up.
Well, of course, and especially I used to say with Michael Jordan all the time, like someone poke this guy in the eyes and let him sit a quarter or something, to figure it out.
Well, that's what the Knicks and the Pistons did it. They just beat the hell out of him.
More obvious than that. You're allowed to tackle the man, the quarterback when you're allowed to tackle him. So if you do it a little late or a little early, it should you get fined for it, get penalized for it, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I think. You have a chance. The team plays really well on the road. You can move the ball. I think you can run on the Packers. I think Dez can get open. I think Witten can get open.
I think we're pretty even. I really do. I really do think we're even.
Yeah, the line seems high.
The temperature doesn't seem high, which is what worries me.
Is that
5 or 6 or 7 degrees? But
is that good for you or bad for you?
I don't know. I mean, it can't be that good. I think maybe they have tougher players, So,
have you thought about going to this game?
Well, I'm not, because here's the thing. I'm going to Arlington because Jimmy Kimmel Live, we're doing a live bit for the college championship game. So I'm flying out right after this, 3 o'clock our time. And, so.
Oh, interesting.
But maybe Seattle. You'll come with me to Seattle next week. Listen to me. Look how confident I am.
Well, I will not come with you to Seattle because I'm hoping my team will be playing.
All right. That's true. And Colts and Broncos, who will they be playing? At 4:40 Eastern Sunday.
The freaking Broncos. It's unbelievable. They get the 2 seed instead of the 1 seed, and they still get the easier game.
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel the same way with the Cowboys. Cowboys beat the Seahawks in regular season, have the same record as them, and they don't get to host the Panthers. The Seahawks do. So.
Well, it's because you lost to the Washington professional football team that night.
Games,
that Monday night Washington game killed you.
So stupid.
Can't have that one. That was terrible.
If we win that game in overtime, Romo might win MVP.
You lost to Colt McCoy. It cost you the 1 seed. You would have the. Although, I mean, after watching the quote-unquote home field advantage yesterday, I'm not sure it matters where the Cowboys play.
That's what I was worried about. 14-point deficit at home? No way we're coming back.
It was like in the last 2 minutes after you scored and the fans got into the game. It was like, hey, thanks for showing up, Dallas fans. Where were you for an hour and a half?
I heard they were pretty good. I read that they were pretty good mostly. But
I have Denver by 9.
You said 9. I said 7.5. It started at 7.5. It's down to 7. So you win the first 2, I win the last 2, we tie, and you win for the season. That's it. I can't catch you.
All I needed was a draw.
All you needed was a draw. Thank God we don't bet anything on the end. We're too lazy to come up with something. So, but you win.
Wow, that line seems way too low.
Well, we have Andrew the Giant Luck. Andrew, you take on the great Peyton Manning, who you replaced at vocational school in Irvington, New Jersey, where you're defending your AFC Southwest heavyweight title. Your thoughts?
I'm getting a lot of emails that my Andrew the Giant impression has fallen off a cliff.
Oh no!
Yeah, I need to go back. If he wins this game, I'm going to study the Andrew the Giant tapes and really get my mojo back for that impression.
Okay, well, you don't let Vince McMahon down like that. He's trying to interview you, but all right, that's
Sorry,
fine.
Vince, I'm back next week.
Okay.
The Colts aren't good.
So we have 3 lines that are 7. The Pats are 7, the Packers are 7, the Broncos are 7.
The Colts aren't a good football team, though.
I don't think
unless
so,
Manning's hurt and Vegas knows this, that line seems low.
Is he sliding a little, Manning? Is that it?
He missed 2 practices this week. That's not good.
They should win. They should win their home game. After having a season like they did, they should win their first home game. That's it.
Wow, and they're healthy. I mean, the second half of the season, like this guy wasn't playing, that guy wasn't playing. It just, and now they should be relatively 100% for round 2. I like C.J. Anderson.
Yeah,
I think he's good. The Bengals game was a goofy game. Terrible weather. You know, I think people are judging are judging kind of their Broncos feelings off that game, and it was a weird game. Bad weather, couple dumb plays.
Yeah, they're not going to run the ball. I don't expect Boom Herron to go crazy like he did, scramble for first downs. But, what was it, 31-24 in week 1? It was the Sunday night game, I think. Denver was winning big
They
the whole
dominated
time.
that game.
Yeah,
the Colts were down by 20+.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Well, so if this all goes according to plan, you get Manning versus Brady, and then you get, or potentially you get the Baltimore at Denver Raheem Moore rematch.
Yeah, you don't want that though.
Well, I wouldn't want that. I'd be devastated if that happened. But and you get Romo going to Seattle.
Oh, that would be great. We shouldn't even talk about it.
Rodgers going to Seattle.
Oh, that would be terrible. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Jason Garrett seems like he has a lot more something. Like they always show him he's just laughing evilly in the sidelines. It feels like his mojo is different. Do you feel like it's different?
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Everything seems different. Here's a guy who won't, on 4th and 1, let alone 4th and 6, on 4th and 1, refuses to line up and try to draw the defense off sides. And it drives me crazy. So what? You punt 5 yards back. He won't do it. And then just like out of nowhere, I think something snapped in his head. And he's like, I'm changing everything around right now. And I think he did it.
Well, he's a very interesting coaching free agent.
Yeah. You think, really? You think they'd let him go after all this?
He's a free agent. They have to re-sign him.
Yeah, they will. They couldn't fire him all these last few years. They're going to re-sign him.
You say they will, but what happens if he wins this round 2 game? He becomes the number 1 free agent. There's like 7 jobs.
Right. Well, who do you see offering him money? Like the Jets?
Falcons?
That would be
Jets,
a major
Bears?
loss. Like, don't you think that would be? Like, let's say the Cowboys don't win the Super Bowl. The only thing that would hurt more Jerry if someone steals Garrett away from him.
I think put it this way. Doug Marrone opted out of his Bills contract and is a hot candidate.
Sure.
I think Jason Garrett's accomplished a little more than Doug Marrone.
I think Dallas would have to have bigger plans. Something would have to be up, a Harbaugh type thing, but he's with Michigan now for them to let him go.
Can you imagine if Jerry Jones hired Harbaugh?
Yeah, they're not just going to take,
Is it weird that seeing Harbaugh on the Ravens sidelines with his brother gave me confidence in the Ravens?
In the Ravens? Oh, Saturday night?
Like seeing both Harbaughs on the same sidelines, like in the back of my head, I'm thinking like, oh, I hope he doesn't come to the Pats game.
Yeah, it was weird. He did. He like tagged in his golden fortune. It was nice.
That was the start. Like, I don't really understand why we have sideline reporters just in general, unless somebody gets injured and we're trying to find out if they're going to come back in time. But there
because
was a
if you
case
put them on the field, they'll get hurt. Oh, you just don't want them to be on the sidelines.
I've never totally understood that job. It just seems like they're constantly trying to shoehorn them in without any real reason for them to be here. Like they could send all their information up to, whoever the announcers are and be like, hey, our person down on the field just told us this.
I think people like to see people freeze and breathe smoke from their mouth while they're reporting, just like when you have the weather reporters reporting on the rain in the street,
I don't think there's any question. Football fans like to see women wearing hats, looking cold, with breath coming out of their mouth, and talking to athletes. But here's the thing with this. So you have both Harbaughs on the sidelines. I wanted to know, like, has John Harbaugh talked to Jim Harbaugh during the game? Like Jim Harbaugh is the big brother, right? Which one's the big brother?
They should figure that out. John is, right?
John is. So do you think? So Jim Harbaugh is the little brother. Like Ben is the little brother to my daughter.
Right.
And he would absolutely annoy her during the game and ask her questions.
Right.
And I was wondering, like, if Jim Harbaugh's like, hey, John, you should run the whatever. And he's like, shut up. Just go away. Go over there. I told you not to talk to me during the game. I wanted to know if that was happening. We didn't find out. I was
Leave my nipples alone with these purple nurples. I can't stand it. Yeah.
I told you to stay over there. I'm going to take your pass away at halftime. All right, cuz. Congrats on a great streak. Congrats on the Cowboys win. I'm really excited for
Thank you.
everything
We'll be
that's going to happen
because
this weekend.
this is where we have to strike. As a gambler, I'm telling you, people. I don't know I'm not saying what you should do just yet, but talk to your banker, see exactly how much you can afford to put on these games, because this is the round to strike.
Well, and as you said, banged up Cam Newton, who can't seem to complete a pass to anybody who's wide open going into Seattle.
Yeah.
I don't really like Carolina's chances.
That seems like a good start. That seems like a good start. Jimmy Kimmel Live, Anne Hathaway tonight. Chris Soules, I think it's Soules, The Bachelor. He has 30 girls to choose from this year. And the Van Hart, later in the week, Matt LeBlanc, Jamie Oliver, Bill Maher, Joaquin Phoenix. My Grantland blog back on Thursday, I had Andy Dalton to not throw an interception. That crazy Hail Mary at the end was stupid, so that one. And then Thursday night back on SportsCenter, I try to start a new streak with my picks.
I got a great email from a reader saying, "Hey, did you know Your Majesty is the same name as Jermaine Jackson's son?" It's like, what? People are the best. I may
need to change it. You guys, Grantland took down. I had a weekly. What did I call it? Like an explanation of why Your Majesty is what it is. I think you guys are just like, enough.
We should just have it as a footnote. Footnote. We can do footnotes on the blogs now. We should put that in for next week.
There you go.
All right, cuz. Good job by you.
Good job by you, Billy. Happy New Year.
You too. All right, I want to call my buddy Gus Ramsey, who I've been friends with since 1982. He's my oldest friend, not literally, but the friend I've had the longest. He worked in Orlando in the early 90s after college and met a guy named Stuart Scott who was working there as well. And when Stuart went to ESPN after they became friends and had worked together for a while, he implored them to hire Gus, and Gus has been at ESPN ever since. And they have been friends for almost 25 years. And I thought on the day after Stuart passed, we should call Gus. So tell us about when you met Stu and how that whole thing went down.
Well, I was working at the NBC affiliate as the weekend news producer during the 6 and 11 o'clock newscast, the whole show. And I also worked in the sports department on Mondays and Tuesdays because those were weekend sports anchors' days off. So I got to run around and do sports stuff. And we only had 2 anchors at the time, and they decided they were going to hire a third. And I got all excited because I was working on my tape and I'm an aspiring sportscaster, although I'd only done radio at the time. So silly, naive me, I certainly thought that there was no reason for them not to hire me, even though I was 25 and had never been on TV anywhere, and this was the 21st market in the country. So against my wishes and in their infinite wisdom, they hired a guy named Stuart Scott out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And Stu had only been a news reporter up there, but obviously sports is what he wanted to do. So he came in as our third sports anchor.
And so you went from initially you're like, this guy kind of stole the spot I was looking forward to. All of a sudden you become buddies.
Oh, yeah. I hated him before he even walked in the door because I'm petty that way. And it took all of 30 seconds of meeting him to get to know him and like him. And I keep saying he was bombastically kind. I mean, he just couldn't help himself from just being super nice to everyone. And his love of sports matches anybody I've ever known. And, a lot of friendships are built on that kind of stuff. And he's only 2 years older than me. So we did a lot of things away from work, pick up basketball, playing in 3-on-3 tournaments, playing in flag football tournaments, going to the movies, whatever. We ended up living in the same apartment complex. So we used to hang out a lot together. He would have game nights where we'd go over and play board games. And I always tell people that Stuart was a great entertainer, and that's all he ever really wanted to do. And that wasn't just on television. You'd see him do those unique lead-ins with the rhymes or the Def Jam or holding basketball or football. But when we had game night, we weren't playing Parcheesi. We were playing games where you had to get up and act something out. It was always those kind of games because he just loved being an entertainer. So the days in Orlando were really special. It was, kind of an incubus period for the both of us, and local news. You always kind of have that bunker mentality, especially the weekend groups. There's always 6 or 7 people are the only people in the building, and you're all just trying to do the best that you can, and we're all kind of learning it together. So I always look back on those times really fondly.
So at what point did you realize he was going on to bigger and better things? And at that point, ESPN had taken off the previous decade, but SportsCenter was a real thing at that point. Dan and Keith were in their, were in their peaks, and it was just a show that had become part of the cultural landscape. They did not have a visible African-American guy. At what point did you start thinking, wow, he makes sense for SportsCenter?
Pretty early on. It was kind of like, I don't know what the formation of a comment would look like, but it must have been Stu at that time. He was just so dedicated to being the very best that he could be. And he went out and did a feature on when the rodeo came to town. As far as I know, he'd never known anything about the rodeo, had never seen rodeo, but he came back and he did an incredibly entertaining, informative 2-minute piece on the rodeo. And that day I just remember thinking, this guy's going to, whatever he puts his mind to, it's going to be great. That's just the way he was driven. And he would do his sportscast on the weekends, and I'd give him 5 or 6 minutes of TV time, and he would never get through it all. There'd always be stuff that he didn't get to, and he after the show would be like, well, can't figure out why I didn't get there. But he would write 45-second lead-ins to a highlight, which most anchors would write something usually 15 to 20 seconds. But I think part of it was he knew that on-camera time was really what he needed to become great at, and that was where he was going to hone the Stu Scott persona. And he was doing Booyah and Cool as the Other Side of the Pillow and all that stuff in Orlando. So it was almost like Orlando was kind of this on-deck circle.
Right.
And he was just waiting. He was waiting to step in the batter's box and hit a home run.
It sounds a little like pro wrestling when somebody's on one of the lower circuits waiting to get hired by WWE or whoever, and they're working on their character. He goes to Sports Night, which was the ESPN2 kind of daily late nighttime show that they had. Initially, it was Keith and Susie Colbert, and Stu was, what was he, the Sports Smash guy? And that was his big break. Yeah,
he did updates with Bill Pito.
Right.
And that's how he started when he got up there. But I think everybody involved with that show recognized pretty quickly that they had something, and it wasn't going to take too long before they started working them into SportsCenter.
Well, and then Keith left, and then it became him and Susie for a while, and that show was actually half decent. I remember actually thinking that show was headed someplace, but by that point, live rights had just become so important for that channel that it didn't have a chance.
It was also kind of unique in that it was a long-form show. I think it used to go 3 hours, which we never did that back then. All our sports centers were 1 hour. I produced it one time, and it was with Susie and Bill Patrick. And we got to the end of the first segment, and they just kind of started talking about something. I forget what the topic was. And as someone who was used to kind of the more formulaic way you would produce a sports center, I was kind of looking around like, why are they talking? What are we doing? What's this ad-libbing stuff?
Right.
But that was how that show was created. In a lot of ways, gave Stu more opportunity to kind of work on that part of his skill.
I remember when ESPN hired him, and you were saying, Stu said as soon as he gets settled, he's going to tell them to get me. And I'm thinking like, oh, that was nice. But deep down, you're like, I was thinking, who knows? Like people always say that, but it doesn't actually happen. And then it happened, and he kind of came through. How many months after that, after he was there, did he come through for you?
It took about a year. They hired someone else after he left, again, much to my dismay. And I got taken off the weekends. I was doing the noon news, and there are a few things less interesting than producing the noon newscast for booking cooking segments and exercise things. And so right. I was just kind of itching to get out of there. And the Golf Channel started up, and a lot of people in Bristol, surprisingly, were interested in going to Orlando. So I was the only one interested in coming the other direction.
Right.
And people laughed, and that created some producer openings. and Stuart went to Al Jaffe and gave him the big sell on me. And he told me that they asked him, could I come in at the producer level? And he said, absolutely. And he set up the interview for me with Al, and it was pretty much the foot in the door that I needed. So I just celebrated my 20th anniversary at ESPN, and I texted Stu around that time. And in the last few months, you never kind of knew if you were going to hear anything back from him or not. And Susie Colbert and I kind of kept reminding each other, imagine how many people are texting him every day,
right.
And how much strength he actually has to reply to whoever. But I never asked him how he was doing. It was always just more conversational. So he didn't want to talk about that. So I kind of tried to draw him out. And I just said, hey, I'm coming up on my 20th anniversary, and I wanted to thank you for everything you did for me to get me there, that we did in Orlando, and even if he never replied, but I just hope that he saw it and that he knows the value that he added to my life and the significance he had, and, me being allowed to live the life that I have now.
Right. When you were there at SportsCenter in the mid-'90s, it was Keith and Dan, Stu, Kilborn, Rich Eisen showed up. It was, I guess, in retrospect, it's considered like the glory years of SportsCenter. Everybody kind of brought a different personality to the table. We heard, if you followed the coverage the last, 36 hours that ESPN's done, and they did a great job with it. They talked a lot about Stu taking a lot of crap for his persona, especially in those early days, because it was so different than what everyone else was doing on SportsCenter. What do you remember from that?
Well, that was even evident in Orlando, because you can imagine in 1992, Central Florida wasn't, people who watch local news weren't exactly prepared for booyah and getting your swerve on.
Right.
And our news director would tell him, Stu, you got to tone it down, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. They don't understand what you're doing.
Right.
But it didn't matter. And then that got him to ESPN. But even at ESPN, he was being told similar kind of things. And among all of Stuart's great attributes, one of them is stubbornness. He was incredibly stubborn, but in a good way. He was convinced that what he was doing was best for him, and he was a man of conviction, and he knew how he wanted to do it and why it was important, and that he wasn't going to change. And I think, there was a time early on when I got there, he had been there a year and a half or so, and he was dealing with a lot of that stuff. And internally, not just the bosses, but I think some of the anchors, I don't know if resent is the right word, but they didn't get it either. And the story I always tell is that I'd been there 9 months, fall of 95. I asked him if he wanted to go down to a homecoming football game at our hometown, yours and mine, down there in Greenwich. And he came along, and we were standing on the sidelines, and one by one, these kids recognized him and came up to him and were saying booyah and talking to him and stuff. And I just remember thinking, here we are in maybe the whitest town in America. And all these kids not only recognize him, but appreciate what he's doing. Like,
yeah.
This is going to work. And if these kids get it, anybody will get it.
Right. So I didn't know him that well. I knew him from you for the most part, but the last two NBA finals, we were all there, obviously. I was working the countdown show, and he was doing, the big interview, basically. And after 2013, it seemed like I think the cancer had come back at that time, but he seemed, I don't actually really remember having an opinion on it, like how he seemed. But this last time at the finals, there was a real difference, and you could see it. And I just remember being amazed that he was going on TV. Like, he looked thin and he looked worn out, but he had this ability you just wouldn't have known on camera. I mean, he looked skinny on camera. But now hearing the stories about how, he'd have to lie down after being on TV and stuff like that. Like, I was just amazed, because I knew he wasn't feeling well at the finals. Like, there's no question, but I didn't realize it was to that degree. Like, what did you know about that last year?
Well, we weird in that we worked at the same place, but we could go extended periods of time without ever seeing each other. In 2000, I moved on to Baseball Tonight. I did that for the better part of 10 years and some sports centers occasionally. And then I did some Sports Nation, and then I started working on some morning sports centers. So our schedules forever were never really incongruous, and we would run into each other in the hallways or whatever every handful of months. And it had been a while since I'd seen him, and I want to say it was probably around this time a year or so ago. And I just went into his office, and he was there, and because we just heard that he'd come back for a third time. And he said, I'm not telling many people, but this one's pretty bad, and it's going to be a battle. So I knew it wasn't good, and for him to admit that it was bad was a little disconcerting. But he just had that inner will. I mean, when you talk about fighting, like, he's the face of fighting. And he and I, as well as you, like, love the Rocky movies. In fact, he's such a positive guy. He's the only person who actually likes Rocky V. That's how positive Stu is. But every once in a while, I would just text him the line from Rocky Balboa: "Life isn't about how hard you hit; it's about how hard you can get hit and how much you can take and keep moving forward." That's how winning is done. And Stu embodied that. I mean, the face that he put out publicly for the last year, and the speech that he gave at the ESPYs, and all the people he inspired, everything he did, I can't think of anybody else who could have pulled it off the way he pulled it off. And I think that was reflected in the outpouring of emotion we saw across the nation yesterday. I mean, if you had told me when he and I were working together in Orlando that 22 years later the president would be acknowledging him, it's just remarkable and a testament to everything he did. And the phrase "measure of a man" has kind of been bouncing around in my head the last 2 days, and I've been trying to think about, how do you measure someone like Stuart? And there's just too many ways. You measure him as a father, as a friend, and what he meant to not only ESPN, but to the industry and all the people who grew up watching him. And, to say he set the bar high is absurd. It's like he put it up so high, everybody else just kind of has to stand there and admire it. No one's ever going to get there. And it's heartbreaking that something like this has to happen kind of for that to all be recognized. But if nothing else, it helps take a little bit of the sting away.
And the ESPYs last summer, which the stories are coming out now, but at the time they kind of, I don't want to say covered it up, but they just they didn't want anybody to know about it. But like, he barely made it to the ESPYs. I know all the people that run the ESPYs, and I was there for some of it. And, he had 4 surgeries the week before, and they weren't sure how it was going to play out and whether he was going to make it, whether he could even fly. Forget about even just getting up there and giving the speech. And he showed up, and I remember being there the day before, and they were doing rehearsal, and there's probably like 40 people total in the theater, and it was just empty. And he was rehearsing the speech and the beats for it, and like 2/3 of the people were crying. And it came out a little bit the last day or so that I think after he gave the ESPY speech during the actual telecast, like, he had to go lie down. Like, he tapped like every piece of energy, but I think he understood that, anyone who worked at ESPN understood from the Jimmy V legacy that you have a moment like that, how many people you can touch and how many people you can kind of inspire. And I think that drove him. But that speech came very, very close to not happening. And, it's going to end up being, I think, one of the things that people remember, especially, what was the cancer line about? You don't get beat by cancer, whatever that line was. I think I know we're going to be hearing that for the next few decades.
It's how you live while you live. But if you had told me on that 5 days before that event that he was in the hospital and we weren't sure if he was going to make it there, I would have said that whatever you have on him being there, everything was competition to him in a good way. Like I said, like when we would have those game nights or we'd go pick up basketball or whatever, he was always looking to compete. That's just kind of what drove him. And I'm sure being up there on that stage that night was one of the great challenges in his life. And there's no way he wasn't going to meet it.
Yeah. Well, ESPN is a huge company, obviously has some flaws, but I think one of the best things about the company is the way it rallies around people, especially people that have been there for a long time and people who have meant a lot to the company. And I think what you saw the last 36 hours, I mean, it was genuine. I think he was one of those guys that did carry the significance that you would have thought just from watching all the clips and the videos and all that stuff. I'm sorry you lost your friend.
I just want to tell a couple stories that aren't out there, and not many people know, but I just happen to know. One, when he came to Orlando, again, being a sportscaster was what he wanted to do. He and his parents were living in either North Carolina or Chicago at the time. I think it was North Carolina. Before he would go on the air, he would call his dad and put the phone by the television in the edit bay and then go do the sportscast. But that way his dad would be able to hear him do his job. And that really kind of struck a chord with me, because I remember when I left WESH to go to ESPN thinking, wow, my dad's going to get to see my work now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was a great amount of pride for Stuart when he got to ESPN, and he wouldn't have to put the phone up by the television anymore.
Right.
Also, when we were in Orlando, the Magic were going through some pre-draft stuff the year of the Chris Webber draft. And all the talk was that the Magic would draft Chris Webber and pair him up with Shaq, and it was going to be this great duo. So when Webber flew into Orlando for his workout session and all that, all the media was there, and they might as well have thrown a parade for Webber. It was that big of a thing. And 2 or 3 days later, they brought in Penny Hardaway almost just because. And Stuart and our photographer, Ricky Scarwood, went out to cover it, and they got there, and the Magic didn't send anyone to pick up Penny and bring him to the arena. And so Stuart said, come with us. And they put him in the news car with him. They asked him if he had breakfast, and he said no. And so they stopped at McDonald's, and Stuart bought him breakfast. And then they took him to the arena for his workout. And, of course, we all know that they ended up getting Hardaway in that draft because of how great he had performed in
the famous workout, yeah.
But that was classics, too. Hey, here's a guy who needs a little help. Let me offer a hand. And then the last one is when we were in Orlando, we were driving around one day, and I had my Run DMC cassette playing, Yes Cassettes, and Stuart asked if he could borrow it. And I said, sure, whatever, and he never gave it back. And so throughout our friendship over the 20-some-odd years, every once in a while I would just bring it up and say, hey, can I get my Run DMC cassette back? And we'd laugh about it, and Lord knows where it went or what he did with it. But I was thinking yesterday that it would be very funny and very much like Stu if he left it to me as well. And if he did, I'll go buy a cassette player or a car that plays cassettes, and I'll put it in and I'll listen to it every day.
Stu Scott, you'll be missed. I'm sorry you lost your friend. I know you guys were tight. I've not lost one of my good friends, so I don't know what that experience feels like, but I know you're bummed out. And
the truly amazing thing is I got a 2-year head start on everybody at ESPN, so I've known him longer, but I probably didn't know him best. But everybody felt like they did. There's probably 5,000 people in this country who consider, maybe more, who consider him a dear friend. I have maybe 25. I have no idea. But the fact that he made everybody feel that way is a true testament to him. And the fact that, he and I could go months without seeing each other or doing anything together. But the second we did, it was like we're just flipping back to the chapter in our life that was important. And we talk about family, and, everybody's echoed that, but I do want to stress that, there's no greater dad than Stuart. And that's the real flaw, or whatever the right word is in all of this, is that he loved his daughters so much and did so much to give them the best life possible. And the fact that he's not going to get to see more of their lives is a real tragedy. And I hope Sydney and Taylor know that everybody at the ESPN family always will love them and will always be looking out for them.
Good luck dealing with this week. Thanks for coming on. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.